So I want us to begin this morning with a story. And the story is that there was an old Indian chief who was dying. He will make it up the stairs, I'm sure. And he calls his family, his children, their children's spouses. He calls them forward, and he gathers them around him. And to each one, he hands a short but sturdy stick. And he says to them, break the stick. And even though it might have been a little hard for some of them, they all were able, you okay there, buddy? Okay. They all were able to break the sticks in half. And so he said to them, this is how it is when a soul goes it alone in this world. They can be easily broken. And then the old man gave each of them another stick. He's old, so he's kind of slow. That's all right. And he also gave them a piece of twine. And he said to them, now bundle your sticks together in groups of 3s and 4s. And once you have bundled your sticks together in groups of 3 and 4, try to break them. And no matter how hard they tried, you're so adorable. No matter how hard they tried, they could not be broken. And so he said to them, when we stand alone, we can break easily. But we are strong when we stand with other souls. When we are with one another, we cannot be broken. This is how I would like you to live your life after I am gone. Isn't that a beautiful sentiment? And aren't our players marvelous? Thank you, players. When we are together, we stand strong. When we are with one another, we cannot be. Oh, look, miraculously, he is healed. He is healed. When we are together, we stand strong. When we are with one another, we can't be broken. Our theme for this month is creating sacred community. We are looking every single month at this idea of being together in community and how when we are together in sacred community, that we stand much stronger than when we are off there as a lone wolf on our own. who was it? Charles, I think it was actually you on, I'm just remembering this, on Wednesday night. Was it you who said we're pack animals? We actually, we actually are pack animals, and we belong together in community. And a very powerful place to be is sacred community. Because when we gather together in sacred community, or Sangha as we defined it last week, that's a beautiful Sanskrit word that means a place where we come together to know the truth of who we are. When we come together in respect and in honoring of who we are, that great power happens, that amazing power happens. Jesus knew this. He said this it's quoted in Matthew. It's told in Matthew chapter 18, verse 20. For when 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. When 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. So let's look at that. And what does that mean for us here in a religious science or New Thought community? When 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, what does that mean? Well, thank you. Yes, that was rhetorical, but Sandy answered it, and I'm very happy about that. She answered it perfectly correctly, yes. It does. We believe that means in my nature. In my name means in my nature. And so what was the nature of Jesus? Well, the nature of Jesus was he was one, as Ernest Holmes, our founder, says in the textbook, Jesus was one who didn't know where God stopped and he started, or God started and he stopped. He didn't know the difference. He didn't make a distinction. He knew that he walked as the Father. He said, when someone asked him a question, he said, the Father and I are one. So that's the nature. When 2 or 3 are gathered in that nature, when 2 or 3 are gathered together, recognizing that God is being expressed uniquely and perfectly through each one in that gathering. When we come together knowing, as Jesus knew, that because God walked as him, he had great power. And there was great power in his words, which is why, of course, he could speak to a dead man and say, Lazarus, rise, and he did. Which is why he could say water turn to wine, and it did. Which is why he could say leprosy, leave that person, and it did. Because he believed in the power that was at his word. And that power was there because he was a living embodiment of that which is all powerful and all creative. That's the nature that Jesus was talking about gathering in. So when we come together in that nature, knowing who we are, knowing the power that we have, it is exponentially experienced. The second half of that passage is, there I am in the midst of thee. In the midst of this, I am. The great I am presence is there. So it's like, now I forgot the word. I couldn't remember the definition of it in first service, and not synchronicity, but what is it? Thank you. Wow. Synergy. That's synergy, which means that the whole, I've got the definition, somebody gave it to me in first service, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I knew it, but I couldn't come up with it in first service. So the whole is greater. So if we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 people, what we create together isn't 4. What we create together is 10, because we have come together in the consciousness of the Christ. That is what that passage means. So that's what happens in spiritual community. And chemists know this. Chemists know that when you put some certain elements together, that something happens far greater than those 2 elements on their own. You know, we could look at oxygen, right, and hydrogen, and you put those together, and what do you get? Something pretty amazing that we can't live without. It's called water. You, of course, remember your 7th grade science class, of course. That's about all I remember from it, but I do remember that. That is about it. I also remember that my science teacher was also, well, this was high school. It wasn't 7th grade, but high school. My science teacher was also my driving instructor. That was just awful. But I have no idea why I'm telling you that, other than I just had a flash of Mr. Pogue, who was also my driving teacher. He was very intimidating. Nonetheless, spiritual community is not very intimidating. That's why I said that. So I could get there and I could speak to the power that happens when we are gathered in spiritual community. I want to give you I'm going to give you lots of stories today. Today is story day, by the way. Yeah, and Christopher is the only one who has his little blanket on to, be in Story Day, but the rest of you are going to get it's Story Day nonetheless. So here's a personal story about the power of community, of this community. So we were having a concert one evening. It was probably a Sunday night. That's usually when these concerts are. And this room was full of us and then other people who are fans of the particular group that we had here doing the concert. And the group was Larissa Stowe and Shakti Tribe. Now, woo! How many of you know Larissa Stowe and Shakti Tribe? Oh, yeah. So they create energy that just knocks your, literally, if you have socks on, they will be knocked off. And they are an amazing group. And they do deep and profound work and high energy work. And so they were going to sing one of their songs that they sing all the time, one of my favorite songs of theirs, and they were going to flow right from it into a Sanskrit chant. Many of their songs are chants, and much of the time it's in Sanskrit. So the song that they were going to sing, one of my favorites, is the Christian Peace Prayer. Those of you who are familiar with Shakti Tribe will know that they take words of Jesus and it's a gorgeous prayer, and it basically winds up saying, instead of love your enemy, they sing about that, but then as the verses progress, the last verse is love until there is no enemy. So it's just a profoundly beautiful song, and it's very high energy and very upbeat, and you just want to get up and dance. You cannot help but get up and dance to this song. Next time they're here, come see them. And then they were going to flow right into the Sanskrit chant. And so Larissa told us what the Sanskrit meant, so we could understand. If we didn't speak Sanskrit, which I don't know that any of us in that room did speak Sanskrit, she interpreted it. And the interpretation of it was that it was about God's abundance, God's unlimited abundance. And that God's abundance is all that we need. It is more than enough. That's because God is all we need, and God's limitless abundance is ever ready and available. So that's the setup to go into the Christian Peace Prayer. So I'm sitting in my normal spot, which is right there, and the song starts, and everybody's up, and everyone's dancing, and I'm dancing, and all of a sudden I get compelled to do something besides just dance. But I knew I shouldn't probably do it right there in the front row. So I went, not to the back, but sort of to the back, and I got up on the pew. I did take my shoes off. I took my shoes off, and I stood up on the pew. Of course, when other people saw it, they're like, oh, well, she can do it, then I can do it. And so then everybody's up on pews. I would like to say, please don't do that at home, but, or please don't do that here, but I guess since I did it, you all can do it too. So I am dancing on the pew, and Bill reminded me between first and second service that he said, I wish you told me that, Michelle, you were going to tell this story, because I have pictures of you on that pew. He's our official photographer. He said, I would have brought him, we could have thrown him on the screen, but anyway, next time, you can probably get an image of it. Anyway, I am there on the pew, just, having a glorious time to Christian Peace Prayer, amazing song, and then they move right into this chant, the Sanskrit chant about God's abundance. Now, let me tell you, I walked into this concert with a little bit of a heavy heart and some fear. My heavy heart and my fear were about the financial health of this church at that time. This was years ago. It was years ago when the economy was going, wee, actually it was going, wee, right? And it appeared that had started to affect us. And our income had really significantly and kind of quickly just dropped. And I was in a bit of fear. I was in my humanness. I am human. I have human emotions. And I was in human fear walking into that concert. And so I'm standing up on the pew, and as they're singing this chant about, which I know now is about abundance, even though I can't understand it, all of a sudden that fear pops up again. Like, oh, okay, we're singing about abundance, but I'm afraid. I am afraid. And so I got scared, and the tears started to fall, and I opened my eyes. And I looked up at this copper beam up here, which I don't know if the lighting on it isn't perfect, so you can't necessarily read it. But what it says is expressing God's love, being God's light, living God's truth. Yeah, there it is. That's what it says. But that night, from wherever I was standing, about right over there, I opened my eyes, and the light is hitting one word, and one word only on that copper beam. And the word that it was hitting is love. God's love. And what came washing over me was, oh my gosh, God's love is all sufficient. God's love is all I need. God's love is all this community needs. We are, in fact, totally taken care of in God's love. And in that moment of community that was created here, because it wasn't just their song or their energy, it was that in part, but it was the energy that was in the room. And I know it was the energy that focused, laser focused that light to that word so I could see it in that moment and have a release of that fear and an absolute knowing that, oh gosh, we are so taken care of. We are so provided for. We are so more than okay. And that was years ago. And guess what? We were so taken care of. We were so provided for. We were so okay and are still and will always be. So that's the power of community. Now, I know you might be sitting out there thinking, well, that sounds really great, Michele, but, God's love will not pay my mortgage. God's love will not buy my groceries. God's love will not, for my business, pay my employees. That's true. But what I know is that when we keep our eyes focused on God's love as our source and substance of all, the promise that is made in the scripture comes true, which is, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and I'm going to call that the kingdom of God's love. Then what happens? What does that promise tell us? Somebody who knows the scripture, tell me. All things will be added. There it is. When we remember that, and we get reminded of that in spiritual community, in sacred community, in Sangha, we are reminded that that is true. And we get to be reminded every week. If we're here every week, we're reminded of that. And when we stay in that consciousness, when we stay in that remembering, then all things are taken care of. They are. That's a promise, and we can live on it. I love these words from Dennis Merritt Jones in his book, The Art of Being. I quoted him last Sunday as we talked about Sangha. I'm going to quote him again today. He said, I believe there is something within each of us that is aching for authentic spiritual connection, to actually know what God's presence feels like. Spiritual community is where this happens. Why? Because it creates an environment where everyone feels commonly or communally and equally embraced in the loving presence of God. It magnifies the experience. Each of us actually becomes a reflector for the other, magnifying God's magnificence and love. In truth, spiritual community is necessary, for we need one another to enhance God's experience of loving itself. Isn't that great? I love that. I want to say it again because I like it. In truth, spiritual community is necessary, for we need one another to enhance God's experience of loving itself. It's true that we can and should create this experience alone in a secluded environment, but ultimately, Jones writes, I believe there can be no greater place for this to happen than in spiritual community. Spiritual masters from all traditions have gone off into the wilderness to experience for a period of time an experience of deepening their sense of the sacred. But they know they must return to community to share the truth they have discovered with others. And that's the second reason for being in spiritual community. I'll speak to that second reason in a moment. But there's something that happens, a conversation that often happens when religious science and other New Thought ministers get together. And it's been written about. Dennis Merritt Jones actually wrote a whole little booklet on it. And it's called the revolving door syndrome. The revolving door syndrome is this. People come and they go. People come and they go. People come and they go. More so than in traditional churches. But in New Thought churches, they come and they go. They come and they go. They come and they go. Well, here's the reason I believe this happens. First of all, we don't have guilt and shame to keep you here. Let's just be honest. We don't. We also don't have hell hanging over your head to keep you here. Right? So you're not compelled to be here because you're guilted and you're shamed or you're afraid you're going to go burn in hell. We don't have that. What happens then, often, is that people come, and this was my experience, we'll see if it was yours, we come in pain. We come because life isn't working. We come because we feel, and we aren't, but we feel broken. So we seek this out. And then we come and learn that we're not broken, that we are in fact whole, perfect, and complete, that God lives as us, and that we have amazing spiritual tools like spiritual mind treatment and visioning and visualization and affirmations and all of these beautiful tools that we freely teach and want you to learn and use on your own. And you become empowered. You step into your power. You heal that broken stuff. You're good to go. And so you do. And so you go. It happens. It happens a lot in New Thought communities. But remember what Merritt Jones said at the end here. He said, yeah, it's good for people to go off and have their religious experience, their spiritual experiences, but they must return to community to share the truth they have discovered for others. It is so important that once we get it to the degree that we get it, once we heal to the degree that we heal, once we've sorted out life and mastered prosperity or relationships or whatever it is, that we then are present for others who come in like we did. So we're there to hold a hand out and go, I know where you've been, and I can help, and I can hold you up, and I can support you in love until you can do that for yourself. That's a powerful thing about spiritual community. I want to give you another story of how that worked. This story comes out of Arianna Huffington's book, Thrive. I've been sharing from Thrive a lot in the last couple of months. And this is a story of a young Jewish boy. He was 11 years old, and he was an only child. And his father passed away. And so because he's an only child, he has no one really to share his grief with. His mother was having her own grief and going through her own stuff, so she wasn't particularly there for him. So he was alone in his grief. Well, tradition in the Jewish faith is for a year after the passing of a parent, that the children, in this case the child, will walk to synagogue every day in the morning to say praises for their parent who has passed away. So this young boy honored that tradition and started walking to synagogue every day to pray for his father who had passed away. About a week after doing that for 7 days by himself, Mr. Einstein, who was the ritual director at the synagogue, happened to be right there outside this boy's door as he walked out. And Mr. Einstein was elderly. But he said to the boy, I realize that you're walking to the synagogue, and I walk too, and I pass right by your house, so I just thought I'd walk with you. It'd be more fun for me if I walked with you. I would have someone to talk to, and I wouldn't be so lonely. So is it okay if I walk with you? And the boy said, yes, of course, it's okay. So for a year, as Huffington puts it, she said, for a year, the boy and Mr. Einstein walked through New England seasons, through the humidity of summer and the snow of winter. They talked about life and loss, and for a while, the boy was not so alone. The boy ultimately grew up to be a man, and he married, and he purchased the home from his mother that he had grown up in, and he had his own son. And when he had his own son, he started thinking about Mr. Einstein and the impact that he had had on him. And he looked him up and found his phone number and called him. He said, Mr. Einstein, I would love for you to meet my wife and my baby boy. And Mr. Einstein said, well, I would love to meet them, but I'm in my 90s now, and so I don't get out much. So if you come to me, that would be great. Let me read to you what the young father wrote about this visit. He said, the journey to Mr. Einstein's house was long and complicated. Mr. Einstein's home by car was a full 20 minutes farther away from the synagogue than mine. It was a full 20 minutes away from my house. I drove in tears as I realized what he had done so many years ago. He had walked for an hour to my home so that I would not have to be alone each morning. By that very loving act of caring, he took a frightened child and led him with confidence and with faith back into life. That's what we do for each other in community. We can lead each other with back to life, back to having confidence in life, back to having faith. We can lead each other. That's what we do for each other here. So thank you for helping to create sacred community. Thank you for being a part of that. Our beautiful How ministry, Hearts of Welcome, is our featured ministry this month, and the description of that ministry is in the pew pocket in front of you. And this group is here to help create the loving space that exists here, to help welcome you in with open arms when you come. Whether you're new here or not, they're here to support you and create this space of welcoming. And this month we're honoring that team, and we thank that team for their work. And on the one side of that little flyer that's in your pew pocket, there's a testimonial from someone here of what this community means to them, and then what the How ministry means to them. And that person happens to be here today, so I want to share his testimonial. It's Bill. That guy sitting right up there, who's one of our song leaders this morning. Yes. So let me just share with you what Bill said. Bill said, until I came to CLF, I didn't even believe in God. Now, I not only believe in God, but I believe in God's miracles. Since I started attending a decade ago, my greatest prayer was for reconciliation with my daughter. During those years, no matter what Reverend Michele said on Sundays, something always pointed straight to my heart and said, pay attention. I did, and because I did, I healed, and I grew. Through it all, CLF has stood by me. And the week after Easter in 2015, my prayer was answered. My daughter called me to reestablish a relationship with me. Yes, I now do believe in God, and I believe in God's miracles. When the How ministry was created, I was one of the first to jump on board. I love giving back to my spiritual home in this way, and I get so much out of it. It fills my heart with joy each week to greet, shake the hands of, give hugs to, and love on newcomers and regulars alike. Because humor is such a big part of my life, I always throw in a dose of that when I greet people. It brings me, and I hope them, great joy. I am truly, truly grateful for my spiritual home and love being a part of the How team. Thank you, Bill, for that. Thank you, Bill, for you. So here's my 2-minute plug for the How ministry. If you would like to be on it or even interested in learning more about it, we would love to have you join us. And there's a sign-up sheet at the guest reception table, which is in the fellowship hall. Just sign up, and Tia, who is the leader of the How, she was in first service this morning, she'll call you and just tell you about it and see if it is a fit for you. But if you think it might be, check it out. Join us. Yes, join us. He says join us. So I've shared a lot of stories this morning, but it really, to create sacred community, we have to have an experience. So I want to share a quote, and then we're going to have an experience. I promise, by the way, it will not be as scary as the experience we did together last week. I want to honor all of you for coming back, even after what we did last Sunday. I know some of you shared with me it was a little tough to do that, although on the other side of it was something pretty profound. But you all came back, so congratulations on being brave. Yay, thank you. Yeah, but we will do a little experience, not, as I promised, not quite as intimidating. This whole talk was inspired by a quote from Starhawk in her book, Dreaming the Dark. And the quote is this: somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere, a circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms to hold us when we falter. A circle of healing. A circle of friends. Someplace where we can be free. I want to take one line from that, and we're going to have a community, a Sangha experience. The line is, somewhere, voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. My invitation to you now, in just a moment, is to partner up with someone. If you don't know who they are, introduce yourself. And I want you to share either one of two things. One, an example of how you have come into your own power recently, and I'll give you a few tangible examples in a second. So you're going to share how you have come into your own power recently, or how you're wanting to come into your own power, but you haven't yet. But you're going to share that as if you already have. So this is going to be an act as if you're sharing that side of it. You might be sharing something that has already happened. For example, I had one person after first service said, oh my gosh, today couldn't have been more perfect. Especially that sharing, because today I am sharing today is my anniversary, 8 years of being clean and sober. Now talk about stepping into your power, that. So that's what she shared. She said, how perfect today on my 8th anniversary. I got to have somebody sit and celebrate that with me. right? So that's an example. Another example could be that, you are or want to stand for something that you believe in, even in the face of people who believe differently. It could be that you've come out of a fog. Any of you ever been in a fog? But then you come out of it? Maybe you've come out of it, or you want to come out of it. You're in it, but you want to come out of it. So you're going to share it as if you are out of it already. And the person receiving it is going to celebrate that with you, and yay, way to go. And maybe ask a question or two. How does that feel? Tell me more. Describe it more. It could be that you have landed a fantastic job, or you've found your soulmate, or you've forgiven something you didn't think could ever be forgiven. You have done that. That is all coming into your power. Maybe you've regained some physical health, lost some weight, or your blood pressure's down, or whatever it might be. So does that make sense? Did I give enough examples that you can come up with your own? So it's either you're actually done it, or you want to do it, but you're going to tell it as if it's already done. You're going to have a whole minute to share. One person, each person has a minute. So if you're acting as if, make it up and make it juicy. You get to make it up, because we know we're planting a seed in the law, right? And so you make it up, it happens. So we're going to give 1 minute. You'll hear a sound from Dave. He'll make some noise over there, and listen to Dave's noises over there. And then you'll switch and share. The other person will share. All right, are you ready? Begin. All right, switch, and the other person share now. Second person now share. Ready, begin. And time. Wasn't that fun? Wasn't that fun? I don't want to because the energy is so amazing and big and beautiful. I don't want to bring it down at all. I love it. Good job. Didn't that feel good? To have somebody celebrate with you, to see you in your power, and to celebrate it. That's what we do here in community. We are here for each other, to support each other, to love each other, to celebrate each other, to hold each other up when that is necessary. I want to leave you with one last story. And that's a story of two horses out in a field. Oh, yeah. Oh. And she must like horses. From a distance, they look like any other horses. But if you stop your car and look more closely, you'll notice something quite amazing. Looking into the eyes of one of the horses, you will see that he is blind. But his owner has chosen not to put him down, but in fact to give him a beautiful life there in that field. And that alone is an amazingly wonderful thing. If you listen, you will hear the sound of a bell. And that bell is on the harness of the other horse. So that other horse, whenever she moves, can be heard by the blind horse. And he follows her and goes where he needs to go. How beautiful that is. What a beautiful story that is. And it shows us that, just because we may be blind now and again, we may not be able to see the truth. We may come in with our foibles and our challenges and our fears. First of all, God doesn't discard us and throw us out, and neither does our spiritual community, neither does Sangha. We're embraced and given a lovely field to live in. And then there are those hanging around with bells on their necks to help us, show us the way when we can't find it ourselves. So at various times we have been both of those. And it's in community that we get to be both of those. So I want to leave you with our theme quote from Starhawk, again, slightly revised. Right. Because this sacred community is a place where there are people to whom you can speak with passion without having the words catch in your throat. This is a place where a circle of hands open to receive you, where eyes light up as you enter, where voices celebrate with you whenever you come into your own power. This community means strength that joins your strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms to hold you when you falter. A circle of healing. A circle of friends. Someplace, this place, where you can be, no, let me change that, where you are free. Let's pray. So in this sweet energy that has been created in this space of celebrating, of sharing, in this sweet, beautiful energy of this moment, we feel the presence of God. This is what it feels like. This is the love of God made manifest. This is the power of God made real, tangible in our human experience. This is the flow of God's creativity, present here, through and as each and every one of us. How beautiful it is to have a physical, tangible experience of it. That is what has occurred right here and right now. And so I speak my word for us so that as we embody this moment, as we breathe in this moment, we so embody it that we walk out of here different, more empowered, clearer about who we are, more certain of God as our source, as God as substance, as God is all we need. Less mesmerized by whatever condition might be in front of us, and more sure that the universe is always conspiring for our good. This is what I know has happened in this room, and I affirm and confirm it through these words. And as I affirm and confirm them, I just invite us each into expanding our consciousness now and expanding our imagination as to what happens as we walk out of these doors more empowered, more coming from a space of God's love out there in the world where it might not be as fully expressed as it is here in this room. But imagine what will happen when we take what does happen when we take this energy out. Imagine the peace that will ripple out from us. Imagine the love that will now be felt by others who will then share it with others who will then share it with others. Imagine the idea of more than enough filtering out into the common thoughts of humanity. Just imagine a world where that occurs. And as we imagine it, we know that it is done. And how blessed we are to have been a part of it. I'm so grateful, so very, very grateful that this is so. And I now release this prayer, release these words into the perfect law that has, because it can only say yes. And so it has said yes. And in that knowing, I call it good, oh so very good. And let it go. And let God. And together we say, and so it is.